Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you the first part of my diagnosis journey. I am one of 3 siblings. I have 3 older brothers, very overprotective brothers. And when I was 6, I was healthy up until I was 6 months old. And when I turned 6 months old, the health visitor noticed that there was a problem. They noticed that one of my soft spots had started to close over, and it was about that size when she saw it, and it wasn't meant to be. And it was very small, which is very dangerous. I was sent to the law hospital, which was our local hospital at the time, and then they weren't really sure what was going on. After a few visits back and forth, then they decided to send me on. So I was sent to the Southern General Hospital, which is now the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, for anyone that doesn't know. And I was seen by the craniospecialist, who was called Mr. Hyde. I was actually one of his last patients that he operated on. He retired not long after doing my first skull surgery, but we'll rewind a little bit. So I was diagnosed with crainosynostosis, which is where bones in a baby's skull fuse early. It means that if the bones at the top fuse there, it can mean that the skull bones go out the way, which gives them an elongated shaped head. It means that if there's bones that fuse this between this section and this section, it means it grows, the skull can expand out this way, because the brain will push against the skull to try and create space for itself, because as the bones in the skull fuse solid, the brain has nowhere to go. It means that the skull has stopped growing, but the brain has still continued to grow, which means the brain, in the nicest way possible, if you're squeamish, don't listen to this sound, gets squished up against the skull, which can cause blindness, deafness, severe brain damage, and even death in the worst case scenario. It meant that by the time they had actually went on to do anything for me, I was monitored from 6 months when I was diagnosed up until the age of 5, just before my 5th birthday. I went through my first ever skull surgery. But by the time they had decided it was best to operate on me, I had already sustained severe left side brain damage, which meant that I had lost all vision in my right eye. So I can only see light. If you cover over my left eye, my brain realises that there is another eye in my head. And I can only see very little light perception through that, but basically it's useless and my brain doesn't register that it's there until you cover over my left eye, and then it realises there's something happening over this side. It's meant that I've had to have 2 facial surgeries to reconstruct my face. I have, as you probably noticed in this video, my right side of my mouth drips down, so when I talk my mouth looks like it's basically moving this way rather than up and down like it normally would. That's due to the crainosynostosis itself and the facial surgeries I've had to have. So I went in when I was just before my 5th birthday and had my first skull expansion, where they go in and they undo the fusion and they expand the skull to give the brain room to breathe. But before I was 7, it ended up fusing again, so I had to go back in for yet another skull expansion, but this time they put a metal titanium plate in to stop the skull from fusing again and allowing it to expand and grow. My head is smaller than the average size adult head for my age. I'm 27 years old now, and my skull is smaller than the average size head because they'd put the titanium in. It affected the growth of my skull. I can still fit into 12 to 13 year old hats. It's quite fun. You can fit into quite nice stuff that are meant for kids. Quite pretty. So they did that, and in doing so they had to take multiple parts of my skull out so that they could fit the titanium plate in. That was meant to last my entire life, and it didn't. It ended up getting taken out when I was 10 because it got infected. My mum was brushing my hair one day and she noticed that there was a little screw from the plate starting to poke out my skull, what had happened is my body had started to reject it. After, I had to count there, after 3 years of having the plate in my head, my body had decided to reject it. So it basically pushed it out my body. It saw it as a foreign object after that and started to attack it. Fun times. So I had to go in and get it removed. That left me in a very dangerous position, and still in a very dangerous position to this day. I have, because they removed parts of my skull to fit the plate, I now have gaps where that plate used to be, because they couldn't put skull back in because it wouldn't have been safe to do so. So I ended up with, I have got skull that's missing from here, the top, which is about that big, the sides, the back, and some bits in the front as well. Basically all over my skull. But the thing with them is they're paper thin. So if you get a bit of paper and you get like a pen or a pencil and you put enough pressure in it to go through the other side of the paper, that's basically what would happen with my skull. If I hit my head the wrong way, it could kill me instantly and I wouldn't know anything about it. So it's scary being told that just before going into high school, where you don't know anyone, because you're not going to your local high school, you're going to another high school that can meet your needs better. Because of that, I have no depth perception in my right eye. I can't tell you how deep something is. So I can't look at a stair and tell you how deep the stair is, how far it goes down. I can't look at water and tell you how deep the water is, how deep the water goes down. So like in swimming pools, a lot of people would say, oh, that's quite deep. I wouldn't be able to see it. I would need to go into the water itself and feel how deep it is, because I do not have the ability to see anything below me. I don't have any ability to see anything at either side of my right eye. I now, this will be another part of the story, but I'll add it in here. I now cannot see anything in my left, anything out of either side of my left eye. I have no peripheral vision and I have no depth perception in my left eye either now, due to the wear and tear of it being used and being the only eye my entire life. It's now starting to basically fail me. So I'm basically going to be blind, but they just can't tell me how quick. So I went through that, and then I basically had to watch what I was doing. So when I went to high school, I had a support member of staff who would walk me to and from classes to ensure that I got to class safely and I wasn't getting bumped and I wasn't getting nudged and I wasn't getting pushed, because if I fell and hurt myself, it could be severe. That led to kind of other issues as well. I have a weakness down my right hand side, down into my hand and down into my leg, which caused a lot of issues with writing at school, because once I overuse my hand and it started to swell up, because I'm overusing those muscles that aren't very strong. So it kind of caused other issues at school. I had to have for exams I had to have a read and scribe, because if the print's too small I can't read it. I also had extra time in exams as well to get my brain round what the scribe was telling me and how she was phrasing it and stuff like that. How the question was phrased and stuff, because someone's reading it to you, your brain has to think really hard on how to get the right answer. If you're reading it off a paper, your brain can see it written down exactly how it is, so your brain has more time to look at it, whereas I don't have that ability to read a exam paper and scribe it, because there's way too much writing in it and I will not be able to write everything that's written in that paper, everything that's needed written in that paper, especially when I got up to higher years and I took higher classics and Latin. There was a lot of writing in it, so there was no way I was going to be able to write it. So I had that in school just to keep me safe. For the first 4 years of my school, I had a assistant that got me to and from classes safely, due to obviously the fact that we were in 2 buildings, and then we moved into Porta Cabins from then on for a while, but we were still in 2 buildings, and then it was only when we went into one big school building that they had built that then I was allowed to manoeuvre myself, because they'd inserted a lift into it so I could take the lift to the floors I needed. I just needed to remember what lift went to what floors, because some of them only went to certain floors. But I could then take the lift rather than taking the stairs, so it was safer for me to get about the school, and I got out 5 minutes early from each class, or I stayed 5 minutes later depending on what, if it was lunchtime or break time. I sometimes stayed 5 minutes later in the class so that the corridors were clear, and then I could go. But other than that, I wasn't allowed to do PE in school. I was going to tell them that I was a normal child, but I wasn't allowed to do PE in school. PE in school was a no-go. They seen it as very dangerous, which my parents agreed with, but I could run. The whole point is, even with my weakness in my right hand side, I could run, and I was a very, very good runner. I'm not anymore, and we'll explain that in another video of why I can't run anymore. But I was a very good runner, and I could run, and my dad says was happy to sign off on the papers to let me do cross country, because cross country is on grass, so if I fall and hurt myself, I'm not going to do myself any major damage. And my hands, although they're slow, they do come out sometimes. They don't always come out, but they do come out sometimes. But it did give them permission for me to do cross country, which was fine. They wouldn't allow me to do it. They said it wasn't safe, and they weren't willing to take the responsibility for me. And my dad's like, you're not taking the responsibility for her. I and her mother and the head teacher, Mr. Sherry at the time, was willing to sign off to say that I could do cross country running, because it was, one, exercise for me, and two, it was allowing me to feel like a normal teenager. Because as a child, I wasn't allowed to go. A lot of my childhood was spent in and out of hospital getting pressure monitored and operations and stuff like that. And then I wasn't allowed to get the front and play in the streets like my brothers were, because in case I fell, and if I fell and hit my head off the concrete, then it would do serious damage and it could kill me. And there was a lot of things that I couldn't do as a child. And they wanted to try and give me as much of a teenage life as they possibly could. And that meant allowing me to do cross country or swimming, but either of them were ruled out. I went swimming and tried to do swimming, and because the pool was rented out just for me to do swimming, and the lifeguard that was doing the swimming turned around and told me that I wasn't allowed to come back because I couldn't swim properly. Now, I swim, but my right arm and my right leg do not come out the water. I do not have the strength to pull them out the water, but I normally swim under the water anyway. I don't tend to swim on top, I tend to swim under the water. But this point I had to swim on top of the water, and my right arm and my leg don't come out the water very well, so I splash quite a bit, although I can swim, and I can swim really well. I was taught to swim in primary school. I got over my fear of water and get over my fear of swimming pools and managed to swim, and I was signed off as being able to swim in the deep end, so I was obviously able to swim in the deep end, and I've never had an issue with swimming. That and the fact that my helper that took me to the swimming was right behind me swimming. The whole idea of me swimming was allowing me just to get into the pool myself and just swim. For my helper to be there if I needed anything, or the lifeguard to be there in case anything happened, but for me to be able to get into the pool myself and swim. But that wasn't how it was. My school helper was right behind me, and she was swimming right behind me all the time, so I never really had that freedom to swim in the pool like what we were meant to be able to do. So, but high school was interesting. My parents wanted to give me as much experience as a teenager as they could, because they couldn't give me the childhood experience because of obviously being in and out of hospital and stuff like that. But the PE teachers weren't willing to sign off to let me do cross country, despite the fact that my mum and dad and the head teacher were willing to sign off and do cross country. So I wasn't allowed to do PE, but other than that, I pretty much was a normal teenager. I went to normal mainstream classes, I did the work, I did the homework. I didn't really struggle with any of it work-wise. I sometimes needed it re-explained to me a couple of times for my brain to understand it, because the left side brain damage means I have communication and understanding difficulties at times, language and understanding difficulties at times. So I do stutter, I do mix up my words, I do sometimes need things explained to me like you would explain it to a toddler just for me to understand it. But in the end, I get there in the end, like it's not difficult. So I managed to do all of that in school. So I was pretty much what you call your average teenager, as much as they could allow me to be in school and outside school. But it was a challenge for my parents, because they wanted to be able to tell me I could go out, just tell me I could go. Like my brother used to get the train and go see his pals in Glasgow and stuff. They want to be able to tell me to do that. They want to be able to give me money and go, here, go on the train, go meet your pals in Glasgow. But they couldn't do that because my health wouldn't allow me to, because it wasn't safe for me to be on my own in case I fell and hurt myself. And then they wouldn't know what to do, and it was just it was a whole big thing. But my parents felt kind of guilty that they couldn't give me that freedom that they wanted to give me, but it wasn't their fault. And I hold nothing against them for that, because it wasn't their fault. They kept me safe. They were told that I wouldn't live past the age of 5, which was scary enough to be told that your daughter wouldn't live past the age of 5, let alone make it to high school, let alone be able to function the way I am, because they told them first I wouldn't be able to live by the age of 5. They were told I wouldn't be able to walk. And my dad, with a lot of hard work, got me to be able to walk slightly later than the milestone would have met, but I eventually did get me to walk. They were told that I wouldn't live by the age of 5, and I did. I'm 27 years old, I made it to the age of 5, so every birthday after that was a big achievement and a big accomplishment. It still is. My mum used to make it a very big accomplishment every year for me. So my dad's going to carry that on now. We lost my mum on the 3rd of May this year, so my dad's going to carry that on now. So, but yeah, it was a challenge for my parents growing up, because they had 3 healthy boys who could go out in the street and play, and then you had me who craved to go outside and play in the street with my brothers, but it wasn't suitable for me, it wasn't safe for me. So I had the back garden was my play area, and my big brother Sean used to come and play with me. My mum would tell him, you can go outside and play with your pals and you go out in the street, and he goes, no, either watch movies with me when I wasn't well enough to go outside, or he would come out the back and play with my plastic kitchen with me and my dolls and my Barbies. Sean was my best friend growing up. Me and Sean were like that growing up. But no, I basically had as much of a normal teenage life as possible. There wasn't any operations or hospital. There was hospital appointments to a degree, but there wasn't any surgeries or pressure monitoring after I got the plate removed. That was me. We did go back and see about another operation to fill in the gaps in my skull, but I won't go into the gruesome details. But we were told that it wouldn't work. I would basically die on the table due to the infection risk. I am a very high infection risk for any surgery at all. So we did that. But no, it was fun. It was a fun childhood growing up, and even though it was in and out of hospital, my parents made it the best they possibly could for me. And my brothers never treated me any differently. They never wrapped me up in cotton wool. They never treated me differently. My parents never treated me differently to a degree. They never really wrapped me up in cotton wool. They just had to make sure that I was safe and I didn't hit my head. And that was the main thing of all. And falling on grass is a lot safer than falling on tarmac outside. So I understood it. And to be honest, it didn't really bother me as a child, because I had the full back garden was mine, was my paradise. That was what I had. So, but yeah, the only thing that really started in kind of, going to say 2nd to 3rd year, can't really remember when, was headaches. I started getting really, really bad headaches. Now, if you imagine a migraine or a headache and amplify it to 100 to 200 times what the average pain is you get, that's my headaches on the daily. I deal with headaches every day. My body's got used to the pain, so I function pretty well with them. It's when it gets to the 300, 450 range, my body goes, not playing, not doing it. But yeah, so it works to a degree, but we're kind of used to pain. But that was really the only thing. So I went to hospital visits to try and find the right pain medication, and I was put on pain medication, and we started mucking about with them, starting off with the low stuff like ibuprofen and paracetamol mixture, and then up to we're not on headache medication anymore, but the medication I am on now is a lot of other stuff, but the main pain medication I'm on now is pregabalin for a lot of joint pain, which again will be in another video. But I think I've rambled on enough in this video. Basically, it is a condition that I live with to this day, and it is a condition that affects my daily life. But I am lucky to be here. I'm lucky to be alive today, thanks to my amazing surgeons that I had. They were a specialist team put together, and it took months and months and months to get the right date for this specialist team, because I had one working on my skull and I had the other working on my face. I had a complete facial reconstruction twice. One when I was 5, when I got my first skull expansion, and the second when I was 7, when I got the second skull expansion and got the metal plate put in. Once, when they told I wasn't live past 5 and I made it past 5, they were told that I wouldn't be able to do anything for myself. I wouldn't be able to function. I'd basically be not quite a vegetable, but I would be reliant on my parents for absolutely everything, from dressing myself to washing myself to feeding myself. And I basically broke down those barriers and achieved it. I can't cook for myself. That's unsafe due to my eyesight, but also my other problems that I have as well. I can't drive, so I do, and I can't use public transport on one, so I do rely on my dad to drive me places. But I really don't go anywhere that he doesn't go at this point, due to other health issues as well, which I'll explain in another video, because we're almost 20 minutes. This video is almost 20 minutes long. It's a long video and a lot of rambling in it, to be fair. But yeah, so I broke down basically every barrier they told me I wouldn't achieve. But right at the very start of this journey, my mum and dad said they couldn't have pictured me in primary school, let alone high school, and let alone going to college, because they were told that I wouldn't make it past the age of 5. So my mum used to struggle, and she used to go months without proper sleep, because she was terrified that she was going to wake up one morning and find me dead in my bed, because I wasn't meant to make it past the age of 5. They had told my mum and dad that my body would give out and I wouldn't live past the age of 5. But I'm 27, turning 28 this year. So I basically am what my mum and dad would call me as a miracle, because I made it and I broke all the stigmas that the doctors had put on me. But I will leave it there, guys, and thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!